Council, city staff, and public participants. We are running just a couple minutes behind. We're finishing up a little Zoom glitch, and we will soon have everybody on, and we will start momentarily. So thank you again for joining us here on a Friday afternoon, and we will come together here shortly for our public hearing.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Shall I call the meeting to order? Or has?
Yes, that sounds like a good plan. If you give me about 30 seconds here just to finish admitting some folks, and then go ahead and start off would be fantastic. Okay, Mayor Rollins, it appears as if all the folks in the waiting room have joined. We have about 21 folks here on the call, and as they continue to come in, I will be the one admitting them. So please proceed when you are ready.
Okay, I'm about to begin. Welcome to the City Council special meeting of March 25th, 2022. It is now 4:06 p.m. Please stand with me and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54953 Subdivision E and the recommendation of the Ventura County Health Officer issued September 21st, 2021. Following social distance recommendations and the determination most recently by the City Council meeting at March 21st, 2022. The public has been informed in advance of the meeting how to submit public comments and to our city clerk, and all submissions will be read in part of the official meeting record. Live participation is accessed through the meeting Zoom link published on the agenda, and we highly encourage and welcome community participation. Those attending will have the opportunity during the public hearing to provide public comments. All members are asked to keep their microphones muted unless actively speaking. Just a little note, hopefully this will be the last time I have to go through that monologue before we start the meeting, as the next city council meeting will be an open city council meeting at the City Hall chambers. So at this time, Madam Clerk, can we please take roll call?
Councilmember Gama.
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Perez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Present.
Mayor Rollins.
Here.
All are present.
Okay, so we have one item on the agenda today, the public hearing, and that's the city name change presentation. The hearing is now open at 4:08 p.m. Do any of the members of the council have any conflicts to disclose at this time? Hearing none, we will Madam Clerk, do you have proof of the publication as required by law? And do you have a complete file of the reports and exhibits?
Yes, we do.
Good. Well, will staff now please make the report? Mr. Steve Kinney, our consultant.
So Mayor, I'm actually going to jump in first before Steve, I have the pleasure to co-report this. So in the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, load up the presentation, and in just a moment, I will turn it over to Mr. Kinney.
Thank you.
All right, so Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and staff and members of the public, welcome in. What we're here talking about today, of course, is the potential name change for the city. And as you can see on the screen here, we have a couple of items, Port Hueneme or Hueneme Beach. So without any further ado, I'd like to first start off the presentation by giving a little bit of background, some history, as we were tasked with kind of looking at this as a whole item, and really wanted to give council and the public an opportunity to see really the history behind the word Hueneme and where it came from and kind of the course it's taken really over the course of 500 plus years. So there's some fascinating information here. Of course, I'm not going to go into it super in depth, but there are some really good pieces of information for everyone to know and understand about the history here in Hueneme. So starting at the far left on the timeline, very quickly in the late 1500s, 1542, there was an explorer named Cabrillo, and he was sailing on behalf of the Spanish out off of our coast, and ended up coming up to a point which you can see later documented above in the slide where it says Port Hueneme, and it has that arrow going through the point right there. And that was originally translated from kind of a root word in Chumash, very commonly referred to as a resting place or a resting spot. And the original name has been translated from Chumash to Spanish and then back to Chumash again. And this is going back again into the 1500s, where it was commonly referred to as Kulkime, Hueneme, and finally Hueneme or Hueneme, as we've heard several times before. But a point of note that goes back 500 years into our history. If we fast forward a couple hundred years later, again sailing for the Spanish, there was an explorer named Cabrera. And when he came to the same point 200 years after Cabrillo did, he then named that point Punta de Conversión. And a little bit later on in history, as you can see, we bump up to 1857. There's a gentleman named James Aldean, and he was from a survey company. And what he did in 1857 was go to that exact same spot and rename it to what was commonly referred to as Point Hueneme. Just a few years later, in 1869, now remember during this time, the city was not incorporated yet as a city. It was a bunch of territories that were coming together under different areas and different names for each of those geologic areas. So there was a gentleman named Mr. Bernard who founded the town inside of what we would consider Point Hueneme just a few years earlier, and named the town Hueneme and became the first postmaster in 1869. 3 years later, Mr. Bard officially laid out the plat town of Hueneme. And what he did is he went back from the Chumash of Hueneme and went to the Spanish spelling and pronunciation of Hueneme. And from 1872 all the way to 1940, the area that we know today was under the name Hueneme. And that's why at the top of the screen, if you'll notice, there's a couple of asterisks next to the beginning and the end of Hueneme. As you can see over the course of history, that has always remained as part of our name, which was Hueneme, either an addition to or a word after is very common in what has gone on. If you see on the upper right-hand portion of the screen, up where my cursor is here, where it says Hueneme Beach was popular in the early 1920s. I know it's small on your screen, but if you take a peek at what that looks like, I bet many people on the call today would say that's what our Hueneme Pier is. And in fact, that's actually incorrect. In 1920, this was like the tail end of what we would refer to as the wharf. And this is dating pre-port. And what the settlers did was they built this very long landing, and they realized, and they learned this from the Chumash, that the tides and the way that the ocean laid on the sand was an ideal launching spot to get into the Pacific Ocean. And as we know, between 1920 and 1940, we had a lot of things going on, especially economically in our country. Of course, we had the Great Depression, and we had other significant events that really caused a downturn in a lot of cities across the country, but especially here in Port Hueneme. And as we move a little bit more from 1920 into 1940, this is when we see that the city officially adopts the name Port Hueneme. And when you look back in history and say, why did they adopt the word Port Hueneme? The answer is very clear. And this came from a historical perspective on a book called Port Hueneme, A History by Powell Greenland. And in there, it talks a lot about the economic viability of the city. And they had a dream that the port would lead into economic excellence for this particular city. And in 1940, they decided, you know what? If the port is going to be our future at the time, why not just name the city to Port Hueneme? And in fact, that is when that name became what it is today. So from 1872 to 1940, it's about 70 years or so. If you take that same concept and follow the tradition of history, we are now moving into 2022, 21st century, of course. And about 80 years later, we are at a position where our strategic plan, our master parks plan, and our continued plans in the future really talk about an economic vitality and the potential for a name change there. And in this part of the presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kinney so that he can walk you through what a 21st century approach to this may look like.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council and members of the public who have joined us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Am I okay there? Great. Okay, then we'll just taking from where Scott left off and bringing us up to essentially the current day. It's important to focus on the strategic plan that the council adopted in 2020. I mean, not only were there some miscellaneous comments about the city name taken during the various types of community input that led to the adoption of the strategic plan, but more specifically, the intent of the plan itself was to look into the future and try and determine the most promising course for maintaining the city's economy in changing times. That was emphasized in the objective of maintaining economic stability, vitality, and growth. And within that, the council adopted a specific initiative to explore the value of city rebranding as a strategy to attract tourism and increase economic investment. So just as you might say that in 1940, the community opted to rebrand Hueneme as Port Hueneme, that seems to me to be a parallel to what is under discussion these days in the current economic environment that we're operating in. So that's sort of launched the serious consideration of a name change as a tool to help the city build its economic future. Then in February of last year, the council approved the staff spending some time to research the issues that would be associated with the name change. And that's essentially what I'm going to go through in this presentation. We made that report to the council in July, and based on that, the next step was the council to authorize the staff to begin the legal process, which would lead to a vote by the residents in November of this year. Okay, Scott. So this is what I'm going to touch on here in the next few minutes. I want to talk about the benefits of a name change and then the costs of a name change. Costs both to the residents and businesses as well as to the city government itself. Want to recap the community input that has occurred to date. And finally, just talk about process from here. What are the legal steps needed to come to conclusion? Okay, Scott? So if you want to look first on the benefit side of a name change to Hueneme Beach, it starts with what I've already touched on. It supports a key long-range economic development objective. And that's important to recognize both the strengths, the potentials of our economic situation, as well as our limitations. Limitations are geographic in nature. Primarily, we're small, we're built out, no place to expand at the end of the road, so to speak. So typical economic development strategies simply don't apply in Hueneme. Efforts to build sales tax base, for example, very limited for us. So we need to look to other alternatives. And again, as has been talked about in the strategic plan, we think there's great potential in attracting small, high-value companies attracted by the research capabilities at the Navy base, by the marine ties through the port. But these are companies that can really locate anywhere and are very often influenced by lifestyle factors like cultural and recreational amenities. Just as their workers, not only the workers at those companies, but individual workers who can work remotely, if they have a choice of where to live, why not pick a community where you enjoy the lifestyle there and you enjoy the cultural benefits of living there. These argue in favor of our promoting the fact that we are a beach community. And that being the case, the city's own name, it's the first, the best, the cheapest, and the easiest marketing technique available to us. Because if you have beach in your name, every time you say the name of the city, you are marketing our most appealing asset, if you will. The word port suggests an industrial setting. The word beach conveys different, more relaxed, recreation-oriented, and a visual amenity as well that we're all very proud of. So that really is the first and foremost, the potential benefit to the city to use the city name as a very strong linchpin of an overall economic development strategy. It also does eliminate needless confusion between saying Port Hueneme and Port of Hueneme. People run into that often. It's not a driving factor, certainly, but it certainly is one benefit of clearing up that confusion. Thirdly, and I think more significantly, it highlights our status as a beach-dependent community, which supports our efforts to secure ongoing sand replenishment funding from the federal government. Certainly an ongoing struggle that you are intimately aware of, and anything that gives us the ability to make outsiders aware of the fact that we are on the beach and we need that beach for physical survival as well as economic survival is certainly to our benefit. Next slide, Scott. Okay, so now onto the cost side of it. First of all, to all the residents and businesses that would have to deal with changing their address from Port Hueneme to Hueneme Beach, there is certainly a monetary expense involved with that, typically involved with printing, and that typically is focused on businesses more so than individual households. So there is that expense to be considered. More broadly, there's what I call a temporary inconvenience to everyone. Just like if you move, you need to send out change of address notifications to all the parties in your life. And that's just something that goes along with having to change your address. In our case, it's really not even that much of an inconvenience, because very importantly, at the next bullet there, it's important to know that the post office will deliver mail based on the zip code, not on the city name, which means that there is no deadline to have to change anything in your address, whether it's resident or business, because the mail will get picked up and the mail will get delivered just as before. Theoretically, a resident who's just fully enamored of the name Port Hueneme doesn't really need to change that on letters. But certainly, if the community is going to change to Hueneme Beach, the point is there's no deadline, there's no rush, there's no mandated expense associated with that. And so that's why the mitigation of the cost impact would come from at least a month's long conversion period to allow people to use up their current stock and supplies and printed material, and then they'd have to replenish it anyhow. Then it's a convenient time to change the name. Next, Scott. Now, to the city itself, there are definite expenses that the city would have to budget for and cover as a part of this process. Tried to identify all those that we could within the city structure. First and foremost, the actual cost of the election in November. I mean, it's only $5,000. So if you want to call that, that's really the risk money involved, so to speak, because that would have to be spent before knowing whether the change would be successful or not. Everything else on the list doesn't need to be spent unless and until the city name change is approved. If it is approved, then there are signage changes. That has to do with everything starting out on Highway 101 with exit signage. The Caltrans would have to change for us, and then tracking down the various highways coming into the city, and then signage, entry signage to the city itself. Next, identification. That's sort of a broad term that covers everything from business cards the city employees would have to modify up to the city seal that's on the wall in council chambers. I mean, anything and decals that would go on the sides of city vehicles. Those are all encompassed in that one category. Rebranding, that amount really has to do primarily with the cost of a new graphic treatment that the city would want to enter into for an appropriate logo to go along with a changed name, and then marketing costs to start to get the word out into the world that the change has occurred. And then the last two, community engagement and official notifications, those are strictly the staff costs involved with those two activities, either the cost of holding meetings in the community as appropriate over the months to come, or once the change occurs, official notifications to the state, to the federal government, to other appropriate institutions would take that little bit of time as well. So it all comes up to 190,000, and that's really a rough estimate, but I mean, I think we're confident that it's, say, under 200,000 rather than some of the very, very large numbers that have been thrown around from time to time. Scott, next slide. Okay, what community input have we accumulated to date? Well, it comes from different sources, and they all came within a relatively short period of time because the strategic plan, the Parks Master Plan, and the general plan were all in the community at nearly the same time. And so we have these multiple sources that sort of validate each other in terms of the responses that we've gotten back from the community. There was, as I said, a little bit of community comment in the strategic plan, although I don't have hard numbers on that. From the Parks Master Plan, there was that survey which just asked which image best represents Port Hueneme. And there you see that the single highest by far was the beach, then followed by the Navy base, family, and the port. And 373 responses, by the way, just to put that in perspective, when the Gallup poll takes national polls to cover 330 million people, they're confident in doing that with 1,000 responses. So 373 responses in a community of 22,000 has got some statistical validity and significance to it. In the general plan, there was both a questionnaire and community workshops, and in both settings, the answer was roughly the same. Would you support a name change to Hueneme Beach? 60% roughly yes, 40% no. And then last, there's an online survey, and that's a live instrument right now. We started it last summer thinking that the Hueneme Beach Festival would be a great place to sort of test the waters. And so we put that survey out then, and we got roughly 30, I think it was actually 35 responses right from the beach festival. And there it was even more emphatically like 2/3 yes, 1/3 no. That survey went dormant, I would say, through the fall, but just within the last week. Interestingly, since the discussion has started again seriously, I'm starting to get responses again. I've gotten almost a dozen just within the last week responses on the survey. And this is one that we'll continue to use. It's on the city website. We will continue to highlight it and make its existence known through other social media outlets so that we can encourage people to take that survey throughout the months ahead. So that captures sort of what the community sentiment that we've been able to document so far has been. And then finally, Scott, we'll wrap it up with just a quick look at the legal process that has to be followed here. A name change represents an amendment to the city's charter. And the state code is very clear and specific about what has to occur in a community in order for a charter amendment to be approved. And that leads to the fact that we're having today's special meeting as a public hearing. We need to have this one today. We need to have another one in a month. And then following that, 3 weeks later, would come to the point where the question before us now will finally be put in an action setting to the council, which is simply, do you wish to authorize putting the question of a name change on the ballot for the November election or not? That will be the decision before the council on May 16th. Assuming that it goes forward from that date, community meetings and surveys throughout. The staff will be working on finding convenient ways to meet with community members, simply to provide the factual setting for this issue, much like is being laid out today. It will culminate in an election in November, at which time the residents themselves will be the determining voice on whether the city's name changes or not. And those results get certified by the county in December. If the outcome is yes, the change is approved, then it kind of comes back to the council to actually decide how and when to roll that out in practical terms in the real world. And that's, we suggest, a potentially convenient and appropriate time would be the following March, virtually a year from today, at which time the city turns 75. And it just seems like a suitable milestone for something as significant as this to occur. So that's what is presumably ahead of us in the months ahead leading up to that election if it goes forward. Scott? And that brings us to the end of this presentation and now ready for questions from the council and from the public as well. I thought it was useful just to end with this comment that we got from a former mayor of Grover Beach. That's a community that's often pointed to as one which did take on the name change a couple of decades ago and seems to have been successful in doing so. Her comment in reflecting on it is that we are certainly and have always been a beach town. So it has been a source of resident and business pride that we now have acknowledged that in our name. And with that, Mr. Mayor, turn back to you and onward for the public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you for the report, Mr. Madelon, Mr. Kinney, to provide a foundation as we move forward. I know there's going to be a lot of public input tonight. One question I had of staff is, besides general comments that might be coming from the community, if there are questions, under normal circumstances, the public would just be able to make a comment and city staff and the council would not be able to respond to that. Tonight, would we be able to, if there was a question that was left out there, would we be able to have some kind of ability for staff to respond to that or not?
Mayor Rollins, let me address that question. Because this is a special meeting, all public comments should be relevant to the agenda item. There should not be public comments outside of what the council is discussing tonight. As a practical result of that, that means that council is free to discuss those comments and interact with the public because those matters have been agendized.
Okay, great. So we have a little bit more flexibility than, say, under a normal council meeting. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Great. So we will now hear from the public comments on this item, including written comments received by our city clerk. Any comments for those who are participating live with us this evening, we would like to ask you to use the Zoom raise your hand feature so that we can call on you during the appropriate comment times. Staff will unmute your mic, and you will have 3 minutes to provide the comments. Madam City Clerk, how many written comments do we have tonight right now?
I have 7 written comments.
Okay, so I would like to hear the written comments first before we get an opportunity for the general public so they have plenty of time to speak and that we allow the written comments to be said first.
Excuse
So-
me, Mayor Rollins, I have a question.
Yes.
Isn't council provided the first opportunity to make a comment? And if so, I would like to go.
No, public comments come first and then the city council will respond after the public comments. So no, not tonight.
Okay, well, I have my hand up to make a comment as a resident if that's allowed, but I'll just.
Well, then when we get to public comments, we can do that, but there's going to be ample time for the public in general to be making comments. So I guess we could all be making public comments during the public comment time, but I think probably at first I'd like to hear from the public outside the city council, and then we can kind of respond to them and maybe answer questions along the way. So at this point, let's go through the written comments or the written letters, if you can, Madam Clerk.
Okay, the first one. I am a 36-year resident of Port Hueneme and oppose any name change our city. Thank you, Anne De Apollo. The second one. We are opposed to the name change and consider the cost to the city to be unnecessary. The funds could be used to improve the city services and programs. The hassle of having to name change for individuals and families should be considered. Martha Reza and John Chamberlain. To whom it may concern, I just wanted to make my voice heard on the matter of the town name change. I'm sure it's only proposed for financial gain, but the cost of every resident and business owner to change it would be astronomical. We are a port town, and I've always been proud of where I came from. There are so many ways that the city could spend the taxpayers' money wisely. Please stop this nonsense and use the city's resources better. I vote no to the silly name change idea. Thank you, Marcy Lewis. We are in favor of a name change. We have a beautiful beach, and changing the name will up all of our property values and hopefully bring in some money to fix up the rundown areas. I think it's a great thing. City council members, I have been living in Port Hueneme for about 2 years. Reading the comments on the local Facebook page, it's clear that residents who have lived here for many years are opposed to the name change, as am I. Here are the reasons. Changing the name won't address corruption. Money that is spent on remodeling City Hall to give nitwits a cushy office rather than address the needs of constituents that allegedly voted for you, such as providing more parking. An extra $100,000 given to employees as overtime pay rather than using the money to help enhance the city. As you know, without the community, there is no money for the city. You can vote for the CEO of the United States, but you can't vote for the city CEO. That's corruption if you ask me, especially when he is leading council members on how to vote. There is a lack of space to invite tourism. Changing the name to a beach city name will invite lots of tourism, and there is lack of space. Tourism will increase the traffic. With more traffic will come more traffic accidents, especially at the hot spots where there are already accidents, which the city knows about and has been told about hundreds of times. Along with crowds will invite more crime and potential fights. I know the city is only thinking about dollars and doesn't think about what's best for the constituents. More crime will put more money in the police and no parking department. That's wrong, as taxation is extortion. Giving so many parking tickets during a global pandemic. There should be understanding that there is a lack of parking and that it's dangerous to park too far away from one's home, considering many factors, including vandalism and catalytic converters going missing. Your so-called peace officers have confessed that there is lack of parking more than once. And with more crime and crowds brings drug and potential homelessness. The name Port Hueneme has a certain panache. When I say that name, it's like saying I live in a beautiful, classy, clean city. Some may disagree that it ain't that classy. There's a lot that can be done to add value to the city, such as beautification to add charm, spending more of the tax dollars on we the people. The name Port Hueneme has a history, the natives who lived here before. Thank you for hearing my concerns. Paul Robinson. I understand that a name change is being considered to spur economic growth and tourism. Will a simple name change really do that? Won't it also require extensive costly promotion and advertising and cause confusion with those already familiar with Port Hueneme? If it is changed and it does spur growth, what is the plan to control traffic and noise? What will be done to control a likely increase in short-term rentals, often a nuisance to residents and known to negatively impact property values? Finally, for us residents, please consider the inconvenience of having to notify creditors, financial institutions, government agencies, utilities, cable, internet streaming service providers, friends, relatives, et cetera, of the address change. Isn't rebranding more than just a simple name change? Wouldn't the money be better spent on infrastructure and other needed city improvements? Why not build on what we already have, the existing name and the fine reputation of the city? Charles Smith. Dear Mayor Rollins and City Council members, we are Port Hueneme residents for over 20 years and are proud to be able to spell it. We are also proud of the Native American origins of our city and wish to continue honoring its heritage by keeping its name. Our area is not unknown, as can be seen by the robust attendance in various public venues throughout the year. People who come to these events for the first time come back to visit again. However, many will bring their own refreshments or explore the neighboring restaurants, mostly outside of Port Hueneme's donut-shaped geography, since there is only one eatery within convenient sand-adjacent beach access. Also, is no need to incur the various expenses of a name change, such as replacing all stationery, emblems, and signs, and making confusion for delivery services and map readers. There are probably many more hidden expenses. As for the beach moniker, you might consider the section of our city separated by the naval base at the northwest end above Channel Islands Boulevard is not really a Hueneme Beach area, and a name change calling it Hueneme Beach would be inaccurate since their beach proximity is nearer to Oxnard and unincorporated county towns. Aside from the beach, the city of Port Hueneme is unique in being home to a deep water port. Why take out the designation of port? It was the reason this area was populated and grew and flourished and continues to serve commerce and the Navy. Why act like we are ashamed of it? And let's not forget that Port Hueneme is where the loved ones of the victims of the horrendous Alaska airline plane crash are memorialized and honored each year at the Dolphin Sundial, fittingly placed on the shore named the resting place by the Chumash. Port Hueneme is a unique and honorable name. Please do not follow the current trend of rebranding to stand out. Let's stand out for what we are, the friendly city by the sea with a rich history. Respectfully, Will and Audrey Albert. And those were the 7 comments. Mayor, you're on mute.
Okay, I'll repeat that. I want to thank all of the residents for taking the time to voice their opinions on the subject matter at hand. I know there's a lot of heart behind that. And as we move forward, we're going to be hearing in public from a lot of people who want to speak in person. What I'd like to do is, as long as all council agrees, is that we will, as each person talks, I would ask that we kind of write down like our questions and our comments based on what our public is presenting to us. And then we can kind of respond back to them kind of as a whole so that the meeting will move smoothly. So with that in hand, the first person, at least that I have with a hand raised in front of me, is Mike Casaba. You've got your hand raised. You will have, as with all the other speakers, you'll have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. And I ask that you focus on the agenda item at hand.
Mayor, Mayor Rollins, can I interject for one quick second, please?
Yes.
I'm helping assist tonight because there are so many community members here on Zoom. I have over 2 pages full. I think it'd be a helpful reminder that if any of the members of the public would like the opportunity to speak, to please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. So that way, while the public comments are being addressed, I can also make a list that we don't miss anyone. So
Mr. Madeline,
Yes,
as opposed to me calling on people, can you, I know I have a limited screen here. I don't want to miss anybody. Are you better able to kind of have the people in order speak?
yes, sir. I can assist you with that tonight, just due to the sheer volume of folks we have in attendance.
Very good. So nonetheless, I did recognize Mr. Casaba first. So he will go to, and then from that point, you will recognize the person who's speaking and they'll get an opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much, Mayor and City Council. And it's nice to meet a lot of the members of this community in this Zoom meeting, and I look forward to meeting you in person. A little background on me. I'm a businessman. I've been doing business in Ventura County for over 20 years. I built a high-tech company in Camarillo, building all-electric underground mining vehicles, and I recently sold that company to the largest maker of mining vehicles in the world. And since then, I've started a new venture. This is in artificial intelligence. And through my 20 years in Ventura County, I've got to know some of the different communities. And I've always had an affinity for Hueneme. And I've come down quite a bit and seen a city that's got just tremendous potential. And when I heard about this name change, I thought, wow, this might actually be a moment where I could put this new company in this town. And let me explain why that is. In artificial intelligence and high-tech business, a lot of it is remote, but you have to have a headquarters. You have to have a place for people to get together, a fairly small footprint. But you want this in a place that's beautiful, and you want it in a place that people are attracted to. The name change to Hueneme Beach will create that attraction. It creates something a little more special about the location. And for the people that will live in the community, I've walked the streets, I've walked the area. There is just a really beautiful, strong community here in the single family homes. I'm talking about Pleasant Valley, Hueneme Road, up to Bard, and even up past there to like, what is it, Teakwood or something. Just a really beautiful community where people stay for decades, for their whole adult lives, and beautiful schools, beautiful churches. This is a real community. It's strong. You change the name, you're going to get some, you're going to attract the type of high-tech businesses like I've started, and you've got built-in customer base. You've got one of the greenest, if not the greenest port in the entire country right here, and you've got a naval base that's always looking for new technology. So it's a real opportunity, and I've seen a lot of for lease signs and windows and so forth. So a little more commercial activity, I think, would be helpful. And I've seen the signs off the 101 that say Port Hueneme, and I've imagined them saying Hueneme Beach. And I can imagine people saying, I'm going to go down and check that out. And I think that is a positive thing for the city. And I think that probably through this process, we can get some facts about that. You know, more commercial activity, does it create more crime? I think that's something that needs to be looked at factually, not just anecdotally. But I can tell you from my perspective, this is a very, very positive step forward for the city. That's my 3 minutes, I think.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
I have a hand raised on a device called iPad. I'm not sure I have a name associated with iPad, but if you are on that device, please give us your public comment.
Okay. Yeah, this is Ricardo Holden. I'm sorry, it said iPad. I wasn't able to connect on my computer for some reason. Yeah, I'm not really actually opposed to the name change. I think the name change isn't that terrible. My concern is once we make the name change, now we're trying to put ourselves on the map as being this tourist destination. And because of our footprint, I don't think we have the ability to really make more amenities that would draw tourism. And I think there's also a lot of negative things that tourism brings: trash, litter, crowds, traffic, etc. So I guess that's really what I'm more opposed to, not necessarily the name change, but this idea that we're going to now be competitive as a tourist destination when we have places like Santa Barbara with these awesome mountains dripping into the sea, places like Ventura right off the freeway that have a larger pier, more amenities than us, and then the Pacific Coast Highway, Malibu and all of those places, which are super busy, super trafficky. It's always impossible for people to find places to park, residents included. And I don't want to see that become a place that I live. I wouldn't want to live in any of those cities that have high traffic like Santa Monica. It's not safe at night. There's a lot of other issues down there as well. So I personally like what Mike mentioned about this is a community. This is a community with a lot of people that take pride in this community and that have known each other for years. And by attracting tourism, we're sort of breaking that community. We're not strengthening that. I don't see how tourism increases the quality of life for the residents. And I like that it's quiet. I like that you can go for a walk on the beach, and there's not literally thousands of people down there, at the beach. That's something that's actually nice and enjoyable about this beach and makes it sort of unique when you look at other beaches across the state. So that's my 2 cents. I think it should go to election personally. If people would decide to vote for it, then that's what the community wants. They want to see this town pursue tourism, and that's what I guess is going to happen regardless of name change or not. But I just want to bring that up and mention how I don't agree that tourism increases the quality of life for the residents. And I think the residents need to have an opinion on that. So I'm glad to see that we'll be voting on it. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
I have a hand raised from Paul Novak.
Okay.
Volume on mute. Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Paul Novak, and I've lived here for over 20 years. And I'm definitely in favor of changing the name because the port should be the Port of Oxnard in the first place. And I'm wondering if we're going to go through all the expense to change the name and remove the word port, could we, I'm in favor of changing it back to the original spelling with a W. No matter how you want to pronounce it, Wainima is the easiest because every time that somebody is new to my address from anywhere across the country, they have trouble pronouncing it. So I'm in favor of going back to the grassroots of the name. If anybody wants to entertain that idea.
Well, thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, I have Seth Bonilla.
Are you there?
Seth, is your
yeah? Can you hear me?
We can. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Hey, glad to hear from everybody, and I'd like to say thank you to all our honorable council members. I'm happy to be here, being able to speak publicly about this issue that seems to be a deep-rooted concern within our community. One of the things I wanted to present, and maybe Mayor Rollins, you can answer this. Earlier, it was stated that 68% of the poll taken for the beach festival seemed to be in favor of the name change. My concern was, are those Port Hueneme residents, and how do you know that they are? So that's just a question you might want to keep in the back of your head. The other thing is the infrastructure. Many of these topics have been talked about already. We're short on infrastructure here. How can this little town possibly support an influx of traffic? Somebody spoke about it earlier, the crime that's going to increase. And that's just, you can look up the stats on stuff like this. Usually the crime rate goes up. You have pollution. You're going to have parking nightmares. This small town has a lot of elderly, a lot of veterans who deserve a piece of measure in their life. They come here in this small town to retire. And I think that's going to just disturb these people, the ones that I have spoken to. I have a petition with 500 signatures already that people who are against this movement as far as changing the beach name. I've also spoken with the council members in Grover Beach, and so there's some misinformation out there. I spoke to a council member in Grover Beach talking about, I think it was back in the 90s when they switched over the name. And from my understanding, there was no economic boom or impact to that community. I think there was a slight bump up in the population. And that kind of concerned me. I also talked to the council members in Seal Beach as well. And they basically said the same thing, that there was really no economic boom. Where these numbers or these ideas are coming from or beyond me. So I'm not sure who's talking to who. I'm just mentioning the people that I spoke to. One of the other things I wanted to mention too, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but I know that Laura Hernandez or Councilmember Hernandez has been spearheading this attempt for some time now. This is the third attempt to change a name that historically, when you look at all the things that were written about it or talked about earlier in the council meeting, why would you want to pull that history out of a little small town like this and inject something for economic gain? Because that's what it seems to be to most people that I've spoken to, is that it's usually the money grabbing ideas without consideration for the populace that lives here. How can we assist them instead of just assisting the city? People can go around and beat their chest in victory. I know you guys, you do a great job on a lot of things, but when it comes to issues like this, you have to stop beating your chest looking for a victory. Look at the people. This is how you get along with people. Inject yourself into the community, ask them things I'm sure you have regarding this. The infrastructure, look at all our commercial space. Chief Salinas has taken all the commercial space basically out of Port Hueneme. We're a pot shop now. That's basically what Port Hueneme is. So where are these high-tech, the gentleman that just spoke, bringing in high-tech business, if you go to the Navy base, that's great. Outside of that, we don't have any space left. All of the commercial space, even for small tech companies, they have no place to go anymore because everything's a pot shop. For crying out loud, we got rebranded on Channel Islands. It's now called the Green Mile. To me, that's shameful. A lot of people agree with that. Maybe a lot disagree with it. I just personally do not believe that a name change is going to impact the city the way that you think it is. What I believe that this is, it's a hunt that it has been for quite some times and I believe it started from, I can't remember her name. She lives in Surfside 1, that had mentioned this years ago, trying to get the name changed. I'm not sure why. So aside from that, let me see here. Other than that, I brought up the crime stats. You can look those up in other cities, commercial space. Mayor Rollins, I just want to say thank you for your time. I do not believe, again, that this is the right move for the city. I've been a resident for only 7 years, so that may mean nothing to anybody. But the residents who have been here 20, 30, 40 years, it's a branded name injected into their minds, into their hearts, into the spirit of their being, as well as the Chumash people. When you look back at the history, why remove something so wonderful in this small city by the sea just because you want to look for an economic flourishment, which I understand every community has to have? Look at the money you're making off the dispensary, for crying out loud. The money you get from the ports, the taxpayer money. Every time we go into another cycle, it seems like we're looking for new ways to get revenue here. The police department takes up 52% of our budget alone, if I'm not mistaken. Find other ways to do that. I don't think we have to rebrand a name. That's the history of this town. That's my input. It's my feeling. That's all I have to say, Mayor Rollins. I appreciate your time.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, if I could respond to Mr. Bonilla, I actually had a question for him before he invoked my name. But would it be, could I at this time ask him a question since we have him here?
I'm going to listen to the council in general. The only thing that I'm concerned about, and I know he mentioned your name in particular.
And I don't even need to talk about that. I just had a question for him regarding his research with Grover Beach and Seal Beach. Because I thought it was very. Yes.
Let me just say, if we begin to ask questions back, that's going to open it up for all councilmen to do the same thing on each person. And we can do it either way, but it'll just kind of lengthen the opportunity for people to address themselves. So what I would prefer everybody to do is to kind of write these questions down along the way. Because if we respond back to each one of these people, it may individually, it may take a while.
Okay, I just hope, Mr. Bonilla, that you stick around because I'm very interested to hear other things that you might have learned from Grover Beach and Seal Beach. And I hope through this discussion, you'll find that I'm very neutral on this issue and I'm not pushing it. Thank you.
Okay.
I would, if I may, Mayor Rollins, I would like to, hopefully, and maybe after Tom Felia, because I would like to answer some of the things raised there by Mr. Bonilla, if I could get a chance, please.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give a couple options to the council.
I'm sorry, Mayor Rollins. I think we should just move on with Tom Felia.
Okay. So as I say, like, I know when people bring up these questions, we're all hot to kind of be able to respond to them. Just write down the questions and hopefully the residents can stay on so we can address them directly. So next speaker, please.
Yes, Mayor, I do have Tom Felia on.
Thank you. And I've had this discussion with other people before, and me and my wife moved here about 1.5 years ago, and we really like it. I'm not necessarily opposed to the name change in itself. I just think it's a little premeditated, or it's a little early. There's a lot of storefronts that are open, that are for lease. Not sure why that's the case, but maybe the city, instead of spending $200,000 and changing the name, maybe do something to bring businesses to the community. I do have a couple questions though for the city council. It costed $200,000 to change the name. Let's say you succeed and you get a bunch of tourists here. Well, then you're going to have to hire more police. So that $200,000 just went up another $100,000. You're going to have to, for every policeman you're going to hire, I'm making this number up because I don't know actually what the number is, but you're going to have to hire more police. You're going to have to hire more maintenance people. You're going to have to hire another permit lady or person to give out tickets. Not that that's the only thing she does, but you're going to hire more staff. So this is easily going to pass the $500,000 mark. Easy. Then even after a year or two, it's going to do that. It seems like you're running to third base before you even round first base or round second base. There's other things that can be done. And the last Bonilla and Mr. Holden kind of said it as well. You know, people are going to come. You're going to get tourists to come here just with the name of the changing of the name, let's say. But then where are they going to go eat? There's nowhere to eat other than Antonio's and the Surfside seafood. There's really no other place to eat. They're going to go to Channel Islands. So any tax money you think you're going to get is going somewhere else. Channel Islands is going to love you. The rest of the Port Hueneme is not, because we're not going to get the money. We're going to have the expenses, but we're not going to have the money. I'm just curious what that plan is when it let's say your plan works. Then what? What happens with the traffic? What happens with the parking? What happens with the additional people that are coming in here? Obviously, there's going to be more problems, meaning more police. There's going to be more garbage, meaning, that's an expense as well. How is the city council going to address that? Because this $200,000 that you're saying is nice, It's a little pricey if you ask me, but it's gonna at least double, maybe triple by the end. The other comment I had to say, when I was seeing those graphs on how 60% approved here and 67 approved here, if you look statistically, out of 22,000 residents, that's less than 0.001%. I don't know if you can make an argument on that. I don't know if you can make a sound decision on that information. Listening to everyone here, I have 3 yeses. I heard 3 yeses, and I heard 8 no's. I didn't see that on the graphics. Why didn't we see that? That's just as valid as 94 people getting, or 38 people being asked a question at the beach at a festival. This is just as valid as those. Why aren't those on the graphs as well? So I'm not really sure it's a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Fiala. Next speaker.
Yes, I have a Phil Thomason.
Well, good evening, Mr. Thomason.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate that. I'm a 20-year resident of Fort Hueneme, and I live at the beach, but I don't think the beach is my identity, and I don't think it's the identity of most people who live in Hueneme. I don't know exactly how many people live at the beach, whatever that means, but I don't think it reflects the naval base. I don't think it reflects the areas that are inland, those off Channel Islands Boulevard in that area. So in that sense, I don't think that Hueneme Beach reflects who we are. A couple of other points I wanted to make. And yes, I'm old, I'm traditional. When people ask me where I'm from Fort Hueneme. That's part of my identity. And I like that, no bones about it. Another thing to mention was $190,000 is the budget for the change. But my experience with government is that budgets are never what happens really. And that's a lot of money, I think, that could be spent for infrastructure. It could be spent in other ways to build quality of life in the community. It seems to me that we're very concerned about economics rather than the quality of life of the people who live here. And I also, like someone else mentioned, I like to walk a beach where there aren't thousands of people. In addition, I would like to see some hard statistics from the cities that were mentioned rather than just a quote from a mayor. Did these other cities really benefit from the name change and from the new businesses coming in and so forth? But generally speaking, I think that we need to focus on quality of life for the current residents rather than worrying about economic issues that would bring other people to our community. We just don't know what that means. So thank you once again, and I'm vigorously opposed to a name change.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. If I may make a call to the public, I do not have on either screen any little digital hands up, but I'm going to make 2 calls. One for a physical hand, if you want to put that up. I have to do it 2 times because I have, again, so many members in the public here. So I do see Stefan, looks like your hand is up. So I'm going to hold you for 1 second. I'm going to switch my screen. And if I may make that same call again, if anybody would like to raise their physical hand, I can see on camera as long as you're on camera as well. And it looks like we have Stefan. So please unmute yourself and present your public comment.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Stephen Plashel. I am a realtor. I moved here 10 years ago and I'm never planning to leave. I love this place. I'd like to say happy birthday to Hueneme for 74 years. I did not know that was our birthday yesterday. Steve Kinney gave a great presentation on the information that, once again, I did not know a lot of that. And also the people that have been calling in have also had a lot of great information for me to intake. I think 5 or 6 years ago, before cannabis came, we were not doing so well as a city. And I think sustainability is really important for us. And I don't really want to overcrowd our city as well, but the windfall of the cannabis that we've had, I think has put us back on track. And I think we should be looking for the next thing that could possibly help us keep replenishing the beaches, the sand dredging. I remember 5 or 6 years ago, we did not get that funded, and the waves were breaking up on top of the street there, right in front of Surfside 1. So I'm in it for the long haul, and I love being a member of the community here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, Mayor, it appears right now that Mr. Gama has his hand up, and he would be the last that has the digital hand up. So if you would prefer to go to Mr. Gama or council, it appears that the rest of the public is just here in attendance and not necessarily wanting to make a public comment.
Okay, so last call for the general public to make a verbal presentation. Otherwise, we will go to city council comments and questions. That being said, I don't hear any, or I don't see any potential resident questions. So now we will go to Mr. Gama.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilperson Gama.
Thank you. I'm going to speak as a resident, and I just want the public to know that this isn't a council decision. The council's role as this is to decide whether to spend $5,000 to put this on the ballot, and then the residents would decide. So I appreciate the fact that you're all here, and I'm even more appreciative of the fact that we're going to be going into in-person meetings, and I hope you all continue to come and get involved and voice your concerns. The fact of the matter is Hueneme Beach matters greatly. And for me, this isn't about economic activity. It never has been about turning this beach into Venice Beach or some of the stuff that you're saying. I am a little bit humbled to hear that no boom of economic activity occurred in Seal Beach or Grover Beach, according to a couple speakers. So and I don't think it's ever been presented to us as, oh, we're going to make a boom of economic activity. But for me, Hueneme Beach matters. And Hueneme Beach sustainability has been in jeopardy ever since the installation of the Port of Hueneme. That's a fact. The history of Hueneme Beach preceded the Port of Hueneme hundreds of years. The Chumash heritage of Hueneme Beach is equally important to that of the Port of Hueneme. The Chumash, long before the Port of Hueneme's construction, were the stewards of the environment here at Hueneme Beach. The fantastic coastal zone served the Chumash in many different ways. The Chumash would rest at the very spot where the mouth of the Port of Hueneme is. Not only would they rest on Hueneme Beach, they would launch their canoes from the very spot where the mouth of the Port of Hueneme sits. You may ask why? Well, the Chumash knew it was the safest place to launch their seaworthy canoes in the dangerous Pacific Ocean. The word Hueneme is derived from the Chumash word Huenema, which means launching spot and resting place. When the Bard family came around, they learned from the Chumash, and they realized that Chumash had known for hundreds of years that what they verified with geological studies that there was a submarine canyon right off the mouth of the port. That makes it the perfect spot for a deep water port. The Port of Hueneme is what is called a natural port because of that submarine canyon. It was learned early on after the construction of the Port of Hueneme that the sand was cut off by the construction of the Port of Hueneme. So the federal government agreed to be responsible for biannual dredging to move sand around the Port of Hueneme so that it can continue its southern flow. Think of a river of sand when it starts to go, or think of a river when it goes dry. Where does it start to go dry at? At the end. So when you think of Hueneme Beach, think of it as the midway point of a river of sand. And that river of sand originates at the Santa Clara River. and that river of sand flows south all the way to Point Mugu and beyond. Currently, Point Mugu is experiencing infrastructure damage from a lack of sand. Speaking for myself, rebranding our city to Hueneme Beach will make sure everybody understands the plight of Hueneme Beach. I'm very proud of the effort that myself, Councilmember Hernandez, and Mayor Rollins have taken since we were elected. We came into office to try and stabilize the disappearing Hueneme Beach, and it makes
your voice is out. Stephen, your voice is gone again, so you need to put it back on unmute.
Did that just happen? So when Mayor Rollins, myself, and Laura Hernandez were elected, we galvanized around the point that we need to sustain Hueneme Beach. And we have been working very hard over the last 3 years. And then with the addition of Council Member Perez and Mayor Pro Tem Martinez last year, we succeeded in drafting a letter through our lobbyists to Julia Brownlee's office. And we have now just been informed that we have massively increased the funding to sustain Hueneme Beach, to move that sand around the corner because our beach is disappearing. So we know what's happening down at Point Mugu right now. They are losing sand and it's causing infrastructure damage to Point Mugu. So this issue of changing the name for me is more about sustaining Hueneme Beach. Hueneme Beach matters, and the Channel Islands Harbor was built to trap sand so that it would not be lost into that same submarine canyon that makes it a safe place to launch canoes and now vessels. So when I talk about my support for the change, there are two important pillars for my support, among others, and they don't have to do with trying to make this a booming economy. It has to do with holding in reverence Hueneme Beach's long history. I also want us all to respect the beach and be good stewards of the beach like the Chumash did. Hueneme Beach matters. And if you look down coast from Hueneme Pier, what do you see? We see pollution, and we want it fixed. It deserves to be fixed. And we need to revere the beach just like our Chumash predecessors have done for hundreds of years. So there's other reasons to consider in this change, but for me, it's about sustaining Hueneme Beach, getting that sand consistently moved around the corner because we have to mimic Mother Nature. We haven't mimicked Mother Nature for a very long time. This year in October will be the first time that we had a massive increase of funding. It's almost doubled, guys. I mean, it's really significant. And for that, we all should be very proud. So that's the biggest issue for me, is to make sure that Hueneme Beach is sustainable into the future, make sure that we continue to get that sand moved around the corner so that it could continue its journey down south, so that it could support Point Mugu's infrastructure. And if we don't get that sand, we could lose our beach over the long haul if we repeat the last 30 years. So then the last thing I would like to say is that very often—
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Point of order, please. If Mr. Gama is speaking as a citizen, then he's limited to his 3 minutes, correct?
Am I beyond 3 minutes?
Most likely.
Yes, you are.
And also
and then you invoked your position as city council, so I'm a little bit confused if you're speaking as a citizen or as a city council member. So we just need to be careful of that.
Okay, thank you. So just in closing, I just want to say that I don't think this ever has been about turning this beach into a Santa Monica, Venice Beach or anything like that. I think it's always been about sustainability for our place in history and for representing the Chumash heritage of this wonderful place that we call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Hernandez, you're next, followed by Councilperson Perez.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have time limits or what's the protocol here?
Why don't we all, and maybe Madam Clerk, you can kind of give us like a heads up. Why don't we try to keep it to 3 minutes? through
Well,
the
first
initial
of all,
salvo.
Mr. Mayor, we normally have an opportunity to ask staff questions, and we haven't had that opportunity yet.
Well,
So-
when you get to speak, you can do just, as a councilman, you can do just that.
Well, if we're following our rules of order, Rosenberg Rules of Order, we have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we have an opportunity later on to a comment. So that's beyond 3 minutes. So I just want some clarification here.
So would you like to ask questions?
If I could enter.
Wait a second. Would you like to ask questions first then?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
I would have liked the script to be followed, to be honest with you, because when we have a public hearing, we would have a council questions and then we'd move into public comments. And I think that's what's different here, which
but
I'm confused on. So
the city clerk tonight laid it out to me that she wanted to see that public comments were to be first. You're right, though. Normally that would be the case.
But this is a public hearing. So anyways, we'll just move on.
Councilperson Hernandez.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I did have some questions and comments for staff. And I know that we're going to do this again come April 25th. And I just wanted to suggest to staff that in your presentations, if you could make the diagrams and the photos larger, I think public would be better able to view some of the items that you're presenting, because I thought they were quite valuable, but they are difficult to see. I wanted to ask Mr. Kinney, if you could describe, well, I have several questions for Mr. Kinney. If you could describe what marketing or what actions the city has taken to date to increase tourism and to improve on our economic development plan. It could be a question for our city manager as well.
I can certainly start out anyhow. Councilmember Hernandez. Regarding tourism, the only substantive step that comes to mind to me right now about increasing our exposure in the tourism realm is the decision by the council several years ago to become a member of the Ventura County Lodging Association. If you recall, that's the group that's headed by Brian Tucker, who gave us that presentation last summer. So it involves marketing through hotel properties. And it's also self-funded. It's not funded by city general funds, but comes from hotel revenues. So that was an effort to expand the tourism profile of the city, I think. Beyond that, the city really has not gone more deeply into tourism marketing.
Okay, and what about businesses? What have we done to make it easier or to attract businesses, first of all, here to Port Hueneme, and to assist them through permitting process and to feel welcomed here in Port Hueneme? Have we done any work in that area?
Councilmember Hernandez, if I may address the question a little bit in part of the first question too. In the absence of what I would call an active chamber of commerce or service level groups, the city during COVID has been the entity that's been engaging businesses and trying to get them as much support as we can to take advantage of every COVID-related benefit that has been made available from the county to the state and throughout the federal system of grants, including ARPA projects that were identified. In terms of marketing, we, especially during COVID, in the initial year or so, we had website-based promotions on behalf of our restaurants, so that our restaurants, number one, had a business activity and also had the advantage of getting a marketing and advertising that they wouldn't normally get. And then through our strategic focus, we are converting a lot of the ways that we engage businesses and the things that we can offer businesses through converting some of our legacy practices, which are very manual, within our hourly city hall hours, to a 24/7 component where we can provide information in detail, and we also can allow permitting 24/7. We just contract for a system called OpenGov that allows us to do that, many other things that support businesses. And there's a lot of discovery going on right now to look at what businesses, not too dissimilar than what Mr. McCaskill was describing, that would attract smaller footprint businesses to a community like ours, with an emphasis on, like a lot of the public was describing, as a wellness and a peaceful environment to call home, and smaller businesses. And so those are some additional initiatives that are, and some in the early stages, some a little bit more advanced, but part of a strategy to engage and support our local businesses that are here, retain them, improve their capability. And I think the final thing is there are a lot of vacant storefronts, and we are looking at ways to engage the owners to either improve and or sell to those that might develop it. So that's another initiative that is ongoing.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know that many of us feel that the beach itself is our greatest asset for the city of Port Hueneme. But the beach itself is called Hueneme Beach or Hueneme Beach Park. And if that is indeed our greatest asset, and that's the area we want people to come and see and tour and enjoy, have we done anything in the area in the past to focus on Hueneme Beach Park, like signage perhaps along 101? And I guess what I'm getting at is what actions have we taken? Because I know that Mr. Fiala, Mr. Holden, and others have kind of pointed to that, is that what have we done to focus on those areas, to let the public know and visitors know that that's really our asset, our greatest asset, and we want people to come and visit that and shop in our stores and visit our restaurants. Have we done anything to attract visitors and tourism in that manner, focusing on Hueneme Beach Park, for instance, and doing the signage to support that?
And if I may address it, there are two open tasks that are in work at this stage. One of them is to work with Caltrans to promote the beach as opposed to the city of Port Hueneme, and some of the amenities that exist on the beach, including our pavilion. The other thing is internal, so that people driving through there can have instant visual signage that shows where the beach is, or some of the amenities that we want to highlight on the beach, and some of our monuments, including Bard's monument on Ventura, and in the future when we have more, to make sure those things are highlighted in some of our major right-of-ways, so that visitors on a drive-through can distinguish opportunities to see and experience something new that they may not have in the past.
Okay. Well, you know, with the proposal of a name change, it comes with public expectations that there's going to be something that we're going to offer, something more than what we have now to offer to those coming. We changed the name, but what are we changing with regards to our infrastructure, with regards to how we treat businesses? What amenities are we going to provide to our public? And I would like to hear more about our Parks Master Plan, how that's going to really push our city quality of life upwards, because the park plan is going to do some wonderful things for the city. And if the city is supportive of the name change, then I think it's really important that we showcase what's being planned. My concern is that there was a comment regarding timing, that we're changing the name before some of these things can actually come to fruition. And we have a 2023 anniversary coming up. I don't know if the park master plan implementation, what percentage of that will be complete by 2023. So if you could respond to that, I would appreciate it. And then the other thing, and then I'll stop, is the comments that Mr. Bonilla made regarding Grover Beach and I forget what the other one was, maybe Hermosa or
Seal, maybe.
Well, yeah, I didn't write it down. But if we could find out more information, if staff could find out more information about, the economic boom is one thing, but did it bring in more crime? Was there a influx of tourism and other things that have been mentioned here by our speakers? Did that hold true in those cities? And because it seems to be a concern by some of our speakers, that all of a sudden we're going to be inundated with people from the outside, and then our infrastructure won't be able to sustain that or support that. So if we could find out, do a little research more from those cities and find out if that's indeed what they found when they changed their name. And then I'll have some comments later on, but that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. I think there was a question. I want to make sure that one of the staff elements of this public hearing is identify areas of discussion and interest by the public and council as well. And then in our next hearing, address some of those things. So part of this opportunity is to, again, finesse and calibrate what we talk about in the next meeting.
Great.
With regard to the Parks Master Plan, I think it's important for the public to know that there's no highest priority for council than activation and investment in the Parks Master Plan. There, from the ARPA, there's 4 significant parks projects that were approved in December. There are all in work. The one thing on the beach is going to be a destination playground, which is going to be a significant change in our beach environment and the recreation environment. And there'll be skate parks and a variety of different other things as part of that master park plan. So we'll put a little more emphasis on that in the next meeting. And I want to just finish with that comment was, the initiative for this was not a council or a staff initiative to bring this. It was based on the engagements that we did, significant engagements throughout the entire community, not just the beach community, where we got that data from. And that engagement told us that there was a strong interest to at least take a look at it. And so that's for the most part why we're here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilperson Perez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo the comments of Mr. Gama and Ms. Hernandez. I agree with everything that they've said. And while I disagree that it does have an economic need for it, we have a city that we are very limited in growth. We cannot build really anywhere. We will be taking a projected 40% hit in our dispensary income in the next few years. And the owners are expecting that hit. So even though it's not the main focus for money or economic growth, it is something that we have to look into. And since we are so limited in what we can do, we have to find it somewhere. So coming up with creative ways of trying to create future financial stability is important to this council, and making sure that all the amenities that we are trying to put forth in terms of our ARPA allocations and our Parks Master Plan, we need to be able to sustain that. We need money, a steady income coming in to make sure that we can keep on top of all those amenities. And it is important to note that I don't want a huge tourist attraction. I don't want to be a Hermosa Beach. I don't want crowded beaches. We can't really grow much more than what we are. We don't really have the infrastructure to do so. Although I do expect and hope that it would bring in some tourism, I don't see that it's going to be a huge tourist boom, but we do need to look towards that for another form of financial stability. I am happy to see the small town environment that we have. I'm happy to hear about our crime rate is down 11%. I don't want to see it go up, but I have to look at it in a business sense that we need to come up with smart ways of being able to keep everything to that level. And bringing in businesses is also important, and finding ways of attracting businesses to the area is going to be something we have to look in as well. It's just a matter of trying to find smart ways to capitalize on what we have now to try to make sure that we can continue to make Hueneme a beautiful place, in addition to making sure that our beach is an actual beach and we don't lose that in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez, would you like to speak or first? Not hearing that right now. I'm going to make a few comments and I will leave time for Mayor Pro Tem Martinez to speak at a later time, perhaps. I moved here 15 years ago from a large city. I moved here because I liked the small town atmosphere. I moved here because I liked the small town quality of life. I also moved here when the city was in financial distress. We were in fear of perhaps going bankrupt as a city. We had a substantial financial revenue coming from the port, but pretty much after that, we had very little. The cannabis industry has, and the revenue has helped improve one of the main focal points that I've heard the community talk about, and that is quality of life. Before cannabis, we were in fear of losing our senior programs, our senior exercise programs, our senior lunch programs. We had a number of issues. Our parks and our street mediums pretty much had gone to pot because of lack of ongoing maintenance, not because the staff didn't recognize that they needed to be maintained, but they didn't have the resources to do that. Since that time, we've been able to bring back and are in the process of bringing back a number of amenities that will improve the quality of life for, I think, on an ongoing basis to our local citizens, and hopefully, bring in some other people to see the good things that we're doing. We're in the process of building a dog park. We're in the process of building a really nice beach play structure at the beach. We've improved Miranda Park with pickleball facilities that are bringing a number of probably, I think, an average of 100, 150 people a day. I'm very proud of the fact that we have perhaps the lowest crime rate in 20 years, and that's because we've been able to fund additional officers and additional mental health personnel to make our city much more safer. And that pretty much came from the cannabis industry. And I really have a concern, as you all have read in the paper, that neighboring cities are now finding the secret of this increased revenue, and they're going to get on board, and we are going to lose a lot of that revenue. And I think it's our responsibility as a city council and as a community to figure out how we can deal with that lack of revenue that maybe we see as in the future. I'm very much into whatever the final decision that our residents make, that we do recognize the cultural heritage of the the Chumash Indians and the Wainima or the Wainimi or the Wainimi Beach or the Port Wainimi or whatever, but I'm very, I learned how to pronounce Wainimi when I came here, and it was a difficult thing. And I think everybody recognized and actually are proud of the fact that we have Wainimi in our name. One of the things that I would request staff to do, we talk a lot about like how Wainimi Beach will attract, the business opportunities. And I would request our city manager and perhaps Mr. Kinney to perhaps reach out to the existing businesses to see what they feel about it. Because, ideally, as we move forward, the name Wainimi Beach, would that in fact attract business revenue and like participation in our local businesses? Let's see. What was the other question I had here? And I think it's been addressed, and I want to reconfirm is like, what the name change will benefit our community as a whole. To perhaps look into like the financial benefits of that. I do recognize that our beach is perhaps our largest and most attractive asset. And I think, from my opinion, all of our city council have been on board to making our city as attractive as possible. Our parks are as attractive as possible and usable as possible for our local neighborhood residents. I'm hoping that, wherever we get our revenue source, that, we continue to improve like the look of our city, so that as we go into our city, we have that wow factor, that people are really proud of the fact that this is a really nicely landscaped and kept up city, and that will now improve our property values and improve our pride. So I'll probably comment later on, but that's my opening salvo. Mr. Martinez, I see you on board right now. Would you like to make some comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rollins, and thank you for being patient. I was having trouble going up an elevator right now. So I think we should at least allow the opportunity for our residents to vote whether they want the name of the city changed or not. I do think that it would be good for our city for many reasons. And I know there are a lot of people that are, I guess, scared that it might change the whole dynamic of the city. But I think that we should feel comfortable knowing that we're doing what we can to make our city better for everyone, not just for the people that live in Wainimi, but for people that can come to our city and enjoy the beach and some of our amenities, some of the things that we don't have yet, but that are coming and are in place in line to improve the quality of life of everyone. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you, Mayor Rollins.
Okay. Council Person Gama, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify something. I believe I heard Tom Filia say that we're going to send people down to Channel Islands. Well, Channel Islands Boulevard, and I think that's what you're referring to, but Channel Islands Boulevard is a part of the city of Wainimi, city of Port Wainimi. So, I just wanted to make sure that we understand clearly the boundaries of our city. And there are a bunch of wonderful restaurants on Channel Islands Boulevard that we frequent greatly. And to staff, I would just like to get more information about realistic expectations. I'm a little taken back tonight by this overwhelming feeling that changing the name is going to just open up this flood of tourism to our city. I've never felt that leading up to this. I felt that one of the major considerations was for everyone to understand that the Port of Hueneme is governed by a different board and the city is governed by us, and that it's a complicated area, and we have a bunch of beautiful working parts with the Navy, the port, the Silver Strand Beach in the county, and the sand trap over there at Channel Islands Harbor. And so we're kind of like in the shadow of the port. And I just think maybe we could just get a little more information out there about the complicated intricacies of this area, because it is very complicated. And then in terms of sustainability on the beach, that we perhaps at the next public hearing we could have a presentation that kind of shows what has transpired over the last since 1940. There's been a dramatic change, and it's really affecting down at Point Mugu. So that's it.
Okay.
Mayor Rollins, may I interject for a quick second?
Certainly.
I did just want to make you aware, sir, that we do have Councilmember Hernandez with her hand up, but also on your screen that you probably can't see is we do have two members of the public, Mr. Bonilla and Mr. Fila, who also have raised their hands as well.
Okay. I'm going to first go to Councilperson Hernandez.
Actually, I'm happy to defer to Mr. Bonilla since he had his hand up first. If that's okay with you?
Sure, and then maybe I'll give an opportunity to Mr. Fiala.
That's fine, and then you can come back to me. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Mr. Bonilla. Your mic might be off.
Are we there?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Hey, just in closing, I wanted to say, I'm not trying to nitpick when I say things like this, but I'm one of them people who takes observation on a lot of different levels. Please understand this, that the greatest asset that you have here in this community, it's not the beach, it's the people who live here and the people who entertain that beach. Maybe the economic boom was probably not the right word to use, but economic boom versus economic vitality, that's still telling people that what you're looking for is an influx, whether it's business or weekenders coming into our city and to a point infiltrating it to a degree that's going to cause so much disruption within the city. I'm going to leave that alone. The resting place, when we talk about Hueneme, resting place, that's exactly what it means. Look at the history of it. Councilmember Gamma's right. We all look back at the history and we recognize that as the resting place. Where is the rest in all these things that are trying to take place within the city because of the economic vitality, trying to push ahead? And I understand that it has to be forged ahead to make this city sustainable throughout the years. But there's other ways to do it, if you ask me. The dispensaries were one of the issues within the city in 2018. When you look back, I believe that's when Chief Salinas came in here and the police department was in a lot of trouble. So what I'm looking at from what I've seen is the dispensary money, since we have all these dispensaries and now we're going to have lounges, all that money has been pushed in so much to the police departments to make it sustainable for this city to have their own police department. When I thought in the past, it would have been more economically feasible to bring the sheriff's department, take that burden off of the people within the city. That's just a consideration. Whether that ever happens or not, it probably won't, but that's just kind of the way I feel. And I've spoken to others who feel the same way. So again, please, just always please bear in mind, sometimes we get excited. Councilmember Martinez said people are scared. People are not afraid. They are not afraid. Many might be apprehensive to change. What they are is just concerned about the topics that I've talked about, other members of the community have talked about as well. For Councilmember Hernandez, I'll be happy to talk with you and send you some emails that I received from Grover Beach, and we can use some comparisons as to when we use the word, again, economic boom versus vitality and what happened there. You know, their population didn't change by much even when they changed the name. I think by 1,000 people from 1992 all the way up to 2017. Not much of an increase. So that might be an indication to say, okay, well, maybe the economic vitality is not that much, but you are going to have people look into that. So it is a consideration. for the council to, at least get all the information they need. What I'm seeing tonight, what's happened with these council meetings, and it's so awesome to have the people within our community come in, inject their thoughts, their feelings, and exactly how they feel about their life here. This is a great place. I moved from Bakersfield, California, which is just a horrible place to live, and coming over here, and I thought, man, I'm at the top of the world. But as time progressed, I started I get myself involved in politics probably a little too much, but I'm a people person. I love people. I hate to see people hurting. I hate to see them with concerns. And now we have this landing on the shoulders of a lot of people here for a particular reason. Thank God for democracy. Everybody's going to get a chance to vote. If this even makes it to the vote, I'm sure you're going to push it into that forum. Well, possibly in November, it's going to vote. And I think that's probably the proper way to do it, to let the people speak as they did tonight, voice their opinions and vote their concerns about the vitality of this city. I think we can do a lot better than we've done. All these projects that you have going on at the moment just happen to come into the influx of the election year, which I find a little concerning because 4 to 5 years prior to this, nothing has been happening. People ask for the simplest things, a dog park, little places to play with their children on the beaches. They haven't even gotten that. I've advocated for beach mats. We haven't gotten that. I'm not going to get off into that topic right now, but when you look at things like this, just the little things, when you become a council member, my opinion
Excuse me,
is
I thought this was a question time, not a comment.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I'm just trying to push just a little narrative in there. Anyway, I'll let it go at that people here in Hueneme, they are your asset, not the beach. People are your assets here. Look after them. Take care of your city business as well. You're going to find, my brother, and the rest of you, that you're going to probably get voted back in. If you don't, I am going to run for city council, but I hope you guys do a really good job up until then. People love you guys. I think you do pretty good from time to time, but let's look at people as your assets and help them look at the concerns for tonight, talking about this name change.
We need to stick on the topic for the meeting, please.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So
anyway, I'm finished, but thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for providing your input. Mr. Fiala.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to clarify what Mr. Gama was saying earlier, Councilman Gallivan was saying. No, I wasn't referring to Channel Islands Boulevard. I was referring to Channel Islands Harbor and Ventura Harbor. Yes, there are great restaurants on Channel Islands Boulevard. 100% agree with you. Antonio's is great. There's a lot of great restaurants here, but Antonio's and some of these other places, they're small. They're not really that big. So people are just going to go to these other, go to the Lookout, go to La Petite. They're going to go to some of these other restaurants that are outside of the Port Hueneme city limits and spend their money, their sales tax. They're going to spend their sales tax. The other thing I actually wanted to bring up, one other thing, and then I'll get out of here. Is there an estimate on how much it will cost per business if the name is changed? For instance, if I own a business here in Port Hueneme, how much is it going to cost me to change the name? Especially if my name is Port Hueneme Dry Cleaners. Now do I have to change the name? Is there at least is there something that says how much is it going to cost for each one of these businesses within the city limits?
So, Mr. Fiala, I'm just going to comment on that real quick. Staff has gotten that concern that you've presented, and so probably in the next public hearing that we have, they're aware of that, and they can address that. Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. This has been such a great discussion, and I just really want to thank the public for being here and sharing your thoughts. I wanted to just clarify, my position with regards to the name change. One, I'm certainly in support of this going to the voters. It really is something that I think our public needs to weigh in on and to vote on, and this is the way democracy works. My concerns are what is going to change besides the name. And that's why I'm really concerned about what amenities the city will offer our public, both our residents and people who work here and who visit here. We currently don't have a newspaper. We don't have service clubs. We don't have a golf course. We have a chamber of commerce, but it's not up and running. So to me, we don't really have one. So these are things that we have to consider when we try to increase our profile and exposure to the public and to those who are looking at coming to Hueneme as either a business or as a visitor. So that's why I talked about the Parks Master Plan. I think there's a lot of great things in there, and I think we really need to inform our public about what that plan contains and the wonderful things it'll do for the city. I think we need to do more work in the area of small businesses and supporting our small businesses and looking at our permit process so that people can easily come here and establish a livelihood in the city. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, I don't think that we'll ever be a Hermosa Beach or will be a Santa Monica or any of the South Bay beaches. We just, as Councilwoman Misty Perez said so well, was that we are built out. We don't have any room to grow in that capacity. We're also off the beaten path. We are off quite a distance from the 101, Highway 1. And because of our geography, I don't see that happening. So, I know change is really hard. People can resist change because they don't know what it's going to bring. But I think the onus is really going to be on the city to keep our residents informed of what's coming up and what is contained in that Park Master's Plan, what our strategic plan is focused on, and some of the things that we're doing here in the city that's going to put meaning and value to a name change. Again, I'm not sold on it. I want to let everybody know I'm not sold on this idea because of those reasons. I just really want to see that it's more than just a name change. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to just make a few comments. I think the key here, it sounds very simplistic, is quality, not quantity. We're a very small city. We have a limited geographical space. We want to make the most of what we have within our community. I guess my greatest concern is that the different shopping centers and they become vibrant. They become reasons for reasons for our local community to be able to get the services in town and benefit those businesses and also benefit themselves. I look at, if we are to bring in businesses, I do like the idea of having very small footprint, but, very high level businesses. I think that will bring in our community. I've heard it's been kind of a mantra of mine for a long time that we have a lot of nice family restaurants and businesses that I think do well to serve the community. But if we're looking ahead to bringing any kind of tourism, we need to be able to bring in some kind of a restaurant that maybe perhaps another restaurant that kind of attracts people to our beaches, I look at the shopping centers with all the vacancies and I'm really concerned that we don't provide a variety or quality. If I go to even the smallest beach towns and stuff like that, they have a branding where they, there's a reason to go to that particular small community that's unique to any other community. And I'll reinforce like a couple of my council members thing. I worked in a city for 25 years that was brought in a whole lot of revenue, but also brought in a whole lot of expenses and stuff. And They weren't even called a beach at the end, but everybody knew that the beach was there. So I'm very much in favor of us moving forward and having the citizens. Each community is different. Names are like, I look at the names I called my kids, and there's an emotional charge as to why I called my kids the way they are. And sometimes it's rational, sometimes it's just kind of a feeling. And so whatever we eventually call our community, I want our community to feel proud of it, to live in, and proud for guests to come in and feel a part of our community. Councilperson Gama.
Councilmember Hernandez had her hand up first.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Perez had her hand up. Are you still interested in speaking?
Okay, Council President Perez.
I was going to touch on some things that Mr. Bonilla said, but they are off topic, so I am not supposed to. So I'm going to say no. I have nothing to say.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just forgot to say something, and I thought it was very important that we are, and you touched upon it, Mayor, and that is that we are a unique city. We are a diverse city in that we are not just a beach city, we're a port city and we're a Navy city, and we have to remember that. They add to our culture, they add to our, the port and the Navy add to our economy, our culture, and if you think about, you know, I serve on the RDP 21 committee, which is all about maintaining and supporting our base here in Port Hueneme, because can you imagine what would happen if our base was closed down, what that would do to our economy? And so we have to think about those things and recognize that separating ourselves from the port is for me not a good reason to change the name, because we have to, I think because of the support, and the reason we're here is because we're a port. So we have to think about those things as we contemplate our vote come November. We are a beach city, a port city, and a Navy city. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilperson Gama.
You made me laugh. I was thinking about all the things my dad used to call me. So yeah, sustainability is what I'd like to close on. And yes, we're not trying to carve ourselves away from the port, but we want to be able to sustain our beach into the future. And to me, that's the key. And any increased attention we can to the plight of Hueneme Beach, I think is a good thing. And the increased attention that we're bringing to the beach is a good thing. And then of course, having being good stewards of the environment is the second and probably the most important thing for all of us. And that's what makes our community so nice. And I get a little bit uncomfortable sometimes when I see the base and I see like their ball fields and the golf course, half of it being shut down now, you know, and I don't know, it'd be nice if we could maybe cut a deal and maybe get some more amenities for our city, more housing. I mean, we're trying to get affordable housing. We got this wonderful projects going on in that regard. So sustainability is the word. We all got to sustain our city, and it's a beautiful place. We've got wonderful residents, and I hope that the residents keep coming out when we get in person. Enough of this Zoom stuff, and so I'll leave it at that. Thank you all.
Okay.
Mayor Rollins, may I add one more thing?
Yes, you may.
As all the wonderful public comments have been made, and Councilmember Gama just mentioned Zoom, there have been at least 2 full pages of participants here in the meeting, whether they spoke or not. May I recommend that you do a final call if there are any additional members of the public who would like to speak. There have been some late entries, and I want to make sure that if I am not seeing them on my screen, they do have the opportunity to be recognized.
That's a wonderful idea, because that's what this public hearing is all about, is hearing from the public. Madam Clerk, are there anybody, well, I addressed to everybody who's watching it tonight, here's your opportunity to say a few words on the discussion tonight, or to either raise some questions or make some comments. We will be having another public hearing, and there'll be I know that staff will be doing a lot of public education over the next few months. But if you've been listening for a while and you're burning to give some input, this is a good time to do so. No, nobody wants to speak. Madam Clerk, I can't see everybody's screen. So is there anybody out there that has raised their hand or raised, be it physically or through the Zoom feature?
I do not see any raised hands at the moment.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and either listening, getting their mind moving as to the potential name change, and also providing some comments and some questions. I think, we're all, the entire city council is taking this seriously. We want the input from the community. We want what's best for the community, and we want the community to feel that what we're doing is what's best for them. So as we move forward, thank you all on a Friday night, no less, coming out and providing comments. That shows true dedication.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor, can you, before you adjourn, can you officially close the hearing, please?
Okay, let me get my crib sheet here.
Yeah, Friday night was not our idea, folks.
Yeah, we have some time limits that the state has put on us, so we need to kind of move this forward. Okay, so okay. If there is no further discussion, we will close the public hearing, the time being 6:10. I would like to adjourn this special city council meeting. It is now 6:10. The next regular meeting will be on Monday, April 4th at 6:30. It will be a live in-session meeting at City Council. At that time, you'll be able to address not only things that are on the agenda, but other things that you have questions on, and this issue or any other issue that you wish to do. And so we encourage you all to come out and keep us company. So thank you all for tonight. The meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a safe evening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Staff.